Hello and welcome to the Listener League Draft Day edition of the Brit Iron podcast. Got a very exciting hour or so lined up for you here. We'll be running through the live draft for our Listener League. As ever, joined by Matt and Sam as well. How are we today, boys? I haven't asked you that in a little while. How are we doing?
Oh, suffering for it was a big night for the Brit Iron boys last night, we'll put it that way.
Yeah.
Stomach was feeling tender this morning, but you know we have a Lucozade Sport. We keep things moving and ready to draft.
Nice. Exactly. Yeah. I was gonna say you could probably tell by my my intro. I'm feeling a little bit as well. So
it's draft day, boys. We've got to get some energy going. Let's get into it.
It's exciting. We've been talking about this for 4 or 5 weeks now. You know, We've been put up posts left, right, centre on social media channels, and I'm buzzing to get this one going. And
can't wait.
See how this one plays out.
I think the thing that's got to be mentioned as well is we've got a really interesting spot sat at 110. So we've got the 10th pick in the draft. We're going to get a lot of bounce backs on the turn, but then we're going to have long waits of 20 picks before getting to take our next player. So it's an interesting place to be in a draft, I think. Yeah,
it definitely is. And Matt, can you give us a little rundown of how this draft is working, as you're the one controlling it for us today?
Yeah, of course. So it's a pretty standard league, redraft league, half-PPR. We're currently giving it about 90 seconds per pick. Pretty standard positions as well. We've got 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 receivers, 1 tight end, 2 flex spots, defense, special teams, 5 spots on your bench, 4 IR spots because everything going on with COVID, just to give a bit more flexibility there. But outside of that, it's pretty standard, just normal half-PPR redraft.
Nice, wow. Good format.
Pretty standard, getting into it. I have a question for you boys. Obviously, we've got a couple minutes here before we get kicking, and the first guy goes on the clock. What do we think our strategy coming into this? Because I know that personally, and I think really it works for all 3 of us, that we do like to go running back heavy. But I mean, sitting there at 110, if depending on how the draft falls, we could be staring down maybe that top tier of running backs having gone, and maybe we want to think about a receiver.
I think we're at a good spot though, where a couple of the big receivers will probably go. I'd imagine 1 or 2, unless people go running back mad before us. I think sometimes I like this spot on the turn where you're in a great place to get 2 good running backs. When you can't get one of the elite ones, you almost need to cover yourself with 2 of that next, still very good and productive tier, but still 2 good solid picks. And there's a lot of deep receiver, I think, value for this year's fantasy football. So, personally, I'm thinking heavy running back, but it depends on who's there. If Michael Thomas is there and no one's gone receiver yet, it's hard to say no to something like that.
Yeah, I'm very similar. Always go running back first round, 9 times out of 10. But like you say, being that far back does give you a bit of flexibility that if the likes of Michael Thomas are there, you can pick them up guilt free. It's not a bad place to pick them up at all. So
sorry, I just cut you off there, James.
So rude, mate. So rude.
Go on. What am I like? Well, I was just going to say, if you boys got anyone particularly that you think might be worth targeting in those later rounds, any kind of values.
We're taking Perriman. I have the mouse. It's happening, James.
I cannot believe we'd actually think about taking Perriman at any point in this draft. But if it's 2 against 1, then I'm powerless.
I'm staying out of this
Sam,
one.
I'll give you your Daniel Jones pick. If I can take us Perriman.
I was going to say, I'll
barter you with that one.
If we can get late, if we can pick up Daniel Jones as a late value, he's the kind of guy that I really want on this roster, just because I think I've gone on about him so much. It'd be almost hypocritical not to then go and take him if we get the opportunity. So if he falls to us, we're taking Daniel Jones as well.
Yeah, I can agree with that. 100%. I actually like.
He's got a rough first 4 games. But outside of that, I think he's in a spot to potentially be, as late round value, a good quarterback.
The other person I think we should really consider is really picking up and getting a stake in that Washington backfield. As a late round value, I think either Gibson or Bryce Love. Bryce Love, I would imagine, will be much later, and I'm not sure where Antonio Gibson will go in this draft. But I think if he's a guy, if he's a guy that you could pick up, and you're set at the running back, and he's just a swing kind of player, he's a guy I'd like to take a swing on.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And we're off First guys
We're off.
on the clock.
Here we go.
We are
So
running.
cool.
First
1:30
overall,
and-
very aptly named. Randomise the order, and sorry, got it. And
Oh.
the standard.
Ah,
It's
yeah.
the
There it
CMC
is.
pick.
You can't argue with that.
Yeah.
It's no more needs to be said. If I'm
It will be
honest.
interesting to see here what happens at 2. Does Barkley go or does Elliott go? I mean, who would you guys be taking here?
I think I'd want Zeke.
Yeah, I'd
Just 'cause
tend
I think
towards
the
Zeke.
Cowboys have the better offense this year.
Yeah, no,
That's
Yeah.
be interesting
I
to
think-
see.
I think personally I'd prefer to go with Saquon just because I think Saquon might well be the lone kind of that offense could run through him as long as he comes back healthy. Kind of all of the weapons that they've slowly put in Dallas, there is a chance that retracts from Zeke. Obviously, he's still going to get shed tons of carries, but
Yeah.
I think I might err towards Saquon in that scenario.
Is
that
that
we've,
is that to do with the jumper you're wearing at all?
I was gonna say,
slight
that seems-
bias
Ah.
pick here. Is that why we're also taking Daniel Jones?
Yeah,
is
we're
that what
taking. I
going
mean,
for?
let's just draft the entire roster. That's what I'd do.
'Cause that worked so well for them last
Yeah,
season.
that would go well.
Ooh.
So I think we've got a couple. I
Ouch.
know a couple of the members of the league couldn't actually get on for our draft time, so sort of set draft boards or going with the auto picks. We have a few picks I think, that run through here, so it'll be interesting to see. But
The rumour of young Ralph Scissor, the 4th pick, is one of those guys.
yes, is
Oh,
indeed.
So
Hopefully he set a solid board so
well,
that he ends up with a good team.
to
And
see.
you know what? You can win leagues. It's not all won at the draft. It's all about in how you trade, how you use your fab, stuff like that. So we've got Dalvin Cook
Auto
going
pick.
off the board,
Ooh.
board second. So
Is that also? Is that off of his own draft board?
I mean, I would assume that's a draft board he has
Yeah,
set for
I think
Dalvin
so.
Looks
Cook
like
to
it.
go
Yeah,
off
it
there.
looks like it. Not
So
bad.
that's-
Oh,
And
ooh,
Michael
the
Thomas
early
going
Michael
off at
Thomas pick.
Okay, so that makes it a
We
bit
could
more
be
of a
getting
stretch for us.
value potentially. There's a...
Yeah, I was
Imagine
going to
getting
say.
Zeke
Yeah.
or Saquon at the 4th pick. That's all I'm thinking.
I mean,
Nice.
you're
Potentially,
to
we'll
be
have to see
sat-
what happens.
Well,
here.
Ralph is probably very happy with what he will, or he will be happy when he sees what the board has drafted for him.
Unless his board is terrible.
We'll have to see because there is
Wow.
is another. I think that is one of the confirmed auto drafts. So
I'm very shocked at that Dalvin Cook pick. I
Yeah.
must admit, but you know they could be a great team this year, especially with Kirk Cousins coming out. I mean, he does not want any guff getting in the way of him and football. He's
Yeah,
come
he's
out.
come
He
up very
said,
clearly stated
if
that.
I die, I die," and that is a bold statement to make. He's
Very
there for
bold.
football and nothing else.
Excited
Really
to
looking
see
forward
what we
to
get.
seeing.
What falls
Yeah.
here. So I,
Yeah,
I
this
think
is
we could get an alright running back the way this is going. Because like, having that early receiver go off the board, you might see someone else panic if they wanted a bit of some heavy receiver action going on. You could see a Tyreek Hill or someone
This
like
could
that,
really
or
fall
Julio
well to us.
jump
I
off
mean,
the
a
board
Clyde
as well.
Edwards-Helaire could very realistically fall to us here.
Yeah, I think the name I'm
Potentially.
keeping an eye on is Mixon. See where he drops to.
I think that would be the one in range. I think, isn't it? He would be
So
Potentially.
where do you who would you class as the more valuable player in this scenario? Clyde Edwards-Helaire or Mixon?
It's very hard to tell because obviously Mixon, off year last year, you would have been disappointed. But now he's got his contract locked up. There's no distractions for him in that sense. Edwards-Helaire is a bit of an unknown. We don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, he should light the league up for everything that's coming out, but there's no guarantee of that. And there's been a couple worrying things mentioned about his pass protection and a few things out of the Chiefs that make you think he's got to absolutely light it on fire to potentially make up for that at points. So I think I don't know if he's the guaranteed first round locked and loaded sort of pick that everyone seems to be saying he is. I wouldn't be shocked if he is. But I'd feel a bit more comfortable with Mixon, I think, personally.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. You know, Edwards
So
Hilaire
Mix-
is a
Mixon
rookie.
over Helaire then.
Well, yeah. I
So
think
it's
I'd agree with that.
Saquon at the 1-4, which means Zeke is still there at the 1-5.
This has got to be Zeke, surely.
You'd think.
I mean,
This is, to be fair, the guy drafted out did joke about Mohamed Sanu at the 1-5
Yeah.
when he dropped. So, we'll see. We'll see if he's a man of his
that
word.
is
I would
crazy.
be very, very shocked if he took Mohamed Sanu. I mean, fair play to
Yeah, I
him.
mean,
If you take Mohamed Sanu at the 105, that is the definition of sticking to your guns. I mean, would we then have to follow that up and take Perriman at the 110?
At this rate, we
I
might
would
get
quit.
Zeke at the
I would
1-2.
quit.
Yeah, I think,
What
at
do you
that
think
point,
about,
I think at that point
Russ?
the league just gets scrapped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have no chance. Hold on.
So time's up. This must be coming
Another
off the
auto,
board, and
Zeke,
Zeke is
yeah.
gone. There you
Top name
go.
off the board.
So what do you guys think of Alvin Kamara? Because obviously, via ADP, he would be the next pick.
There's some risk there. There's definitely
Yeah, but
some
everything that's
risk
gone
there.
on, would you err on the side of caution with him right now?
Yes, personally, yeah. I would a little bit. I think it should all get worked out. But I think currently there's some more secure names there that I would personally put ahead of just for this season. Because we still don't know exactly, and it wouldn't take much, I think, for all it takes is one more sort of round of negotiations where it's not what he wants again, and you could be back to the same sort of situation. And especially we've already spoken about it in some of the previews with everything with the COVID lists and things. Could be a lot easier for a player to sit out for a bit if they don't want to play and put their body in harm's way. Just like, oh, sorry, my friends aren't at it, and I was around there and was in contact with them, so got to sit out and isolate.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a risky one for this year.
Yeah, personally, I think it all depends on where you're sat. I think looking at if I'm sat here at the 1-6 and Alvin Kamara's on the board, I'm probably not looking at him.
Yeah.
Because the risk isn't valuable. But then if I'm sat at the 111, the 112, and Kamara's still on the board, suddenly that kind of risk becomes more palatable because I could grab him there, and then on the turn I get another good running back. So I don't think the risk with Kamara is outrageously high, but it is there. So I wouldn't be taking him at his genuine position. Having said that, Alvin Kamara has just come off the board at 106.
So I think we've got a few auto picks and sort of draft boards set up here in the early ones, but I think a lot of the guys towards this back half got the little green dots are all sat online. So it'll be interesting to see now. We should get some.
Mr. McGuinness is really having a little think about this one.
Well, I think this is the point where you really have to. If we look at the names, it's Edwards-Helaire, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, Joe Mixon, Miles Sanders, just to rattle off a few. And there's Derrick Henry. I think that's the sort of expected. For me, that would have been what I'd take there.
Within 3 picks to ours.
I would actually consider. So we're gonna get our pick out of Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Josh Jacobs, Clyde Edwards-Helaire off the board.
Okay.
So I'm looking here potentially.
Here we go.
Josh Jacobs gone.
Mixon or Drake is what I'm looking at here. I think is the questions.
So this then becomes a question of who do we think is going to have the better offense and get more touches. And I would actually throw my hat in the ring for Kenyon Drake.
So the only thing I'd say against that, though, is we are picking again very shortly after. I don't think Kenyon Drake would go within the next 4 picks, but I think Mixon would.
That's true. And I think the other
but
thing to
which
weigh
would
up
you
is
rather
we've got-
have?
I'd rather have... it's a good question. Who would I rather have? But I just think... it's a risk. Because Joe
for
Mixon
that next
will
round
go.
of picks, there's still a few names floating that we could take.
Mm.
And there's still some very good receiver value for that next pick.
Yeah.
I think we take a punt and then go Mixon, and then pray that Kenyon Drake's available at our next pick.
I'm erring on Mixon as well. I think it's one of those ones, whenever you pray that someone's there at your next pick, they normally don't make it. It's normally sod's law. But I think I'm happy to go Mixon.
Overruled then, 2-1, Joe Mixon's the pick.
There we go.
So let's see now. Kenyon Drake at the 111 now.
Yeah.
They're both two very good running backs that I think should finish quite similar. I reckon on the year, if they both play to the potential, and from what we've seen at their higher points, I think they'll come out very similar.
Yeah.
No, agreed. I'll be interested to see how the next 4 picks.
I was going to say, this is a tense. I can't do the maths, but...
Okay.
So Miles Sanders gone.
Okay.
I mean, even if Drake doesn't make it, we've got Nick Chubb as well, a favourite of James. Which could be
Chubb
great value at that next one as well.
I
imagine
Chubb will
he'll go. Yeah. The thing is, I would be happy with Eckler if he makes it.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Any of these top 3 running backs on the board currently.
So for me, Aaron Jones as well to be considered with the high touchdown upside. I mean, there is going to be touchdown regression from last year.
Yeah, he can't.
It's very no one's going to do that twice on 2 years on the trot. But I mean, that is potentially going to be quite a good team, a good offense. So I would look to him to put up consistent touchdown numbers.
So I know, actually, from thinking about it, this last guy is on an auto pick. He's one of the ones that popped it in the chat. So I don't know if he set a draft board, but if not, that could be Chubb, and then that would be Drake.
That would be Drake.
But it depends if he set a board. It may not be.
Well, my prediction could be horribly wrong then. That Although I still stand by it, there's a higher chance of Drake being available in that.
It's always the way, though, isn't it? When you
it's
want
one
a
of
player
those
to
things.
fall back to you on the turn. It's rare that it happens if they're in that sort of top group.
Interesting to see the Michael Thomas pick, though. No other receiver has gone since then. So you've got someone who, in my opinion, reached massively to get hold of Michael Thomas, and now nobody else has jumped. So that's Austin Eckler off the board.
The
Nick
back-to-back
Chubb as
auto
well.
picks.
So he's set a draft board there.
Now,
And
does
it's
Drake
gone
make
from
it?
that.
If it's not Drake, we've still got Aaron Jones, but then you've also got Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, Julio Jones. We could look to lock up an elite receiver talent.
We could.
I would err towards the double running back. So I think as you mentioned, there's a lot of depth at wide receiver, and once you kind of pass those first few rounds of starting running backs in the NFL, it then becomes a lot harder and a lot more difficult to kind of. You're then relying on all sorts of things. And Patrick Mahomes off the
in the
board.
second. So we get Kenyon Drake.
My prediction was spot on.
Lock him up.
Loaded.
Lock him up. I think we've got to be happy.
I'm very happy with this running back pairing right now.
Just saying, the strategy I implemented there is spot on. If we did it the other way round, we'd have not had Joe Mixon. That's what I'm saying.
And Aaron Jones off the board, I think that's pretty
expected.
Pretty solid pick here.
So now we've this is the main running backs that you see going this early. Gone as a little dip, I think, now to James Conner and the next lot. So I think I would be shocked if we don't see a few more receivers. No, maybe Lamar Jackson as a reaction to the early Mahomes pick, and maybe at least one tight end, at least Kels or Kittle.
I'm very, very surprised that Patrick Mahomes has gone that high.
I'd agree.
I would have expected to see Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson people start to consider them in the third round, but not in the second round. I think that's madness. Not when you've got players like Kenyon Drake and Aaron Jones still on the board.
Yeah.
We've still got Tyreek Hill on the board, as you mentioned. Julio Jones on the board. DeAndre Hopkins is on the board. That is a pick for me that doesn't make all that much sense.
Yeah.
So we've got Ryan on the board at the moment, who is taking up quite a bit of his time. So he's having a good think about this. Will he go for a receiver, do we think? This could be the point, I think, that we might see our next receiver off the board. Yeah,
because the dip now to the running backs is James Conner, Chris Carson, David Johnson, Todd Gurley. That's what's going on. Oh, but it is Conner.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean,
right. Okay. So he's putting a lot of
bit of a
stock
feast
in
or
that
famine
backfield.
one, I think. We've seen two very different seasons, so it'll be interesting to see the health concerns as well. But
it's a risky one.
I think if you were taking a running back, he'd have to be in the conversation at this tier. It's interesting. There's a lot. Wide receivers are slipping a little bit. You'd normally would have expected to see maybe 4 or 5 by now, but everyone's going for the very running back heavy draft.
This proves an interesting conundrum then for our guy at the third pick, who has picked a receiver, and now because the running back class has dropped to a couple of tiers below what he could have picked up in that first round.
That's very.
He might struggle at running back based on that.
But perhaps now he's aware of that, and he's just going to go right. Hell for leather, and he'll just stock up on high level wide receivers because you're not going to get the value that now at running back. So maybe he'll just stock up on wide receivers. Who knows? I don't think that's a very predictable one. Anyone who takes Michael Thomas in at the third pick when you've still got Zeke and Saquon on the board is clearly a rather unpredictable character.
Yeah.
But
the interesting. So what are we thinking? Are we thinking? Obviously, there's a long time to see what comes back, but preference-wise, are we thinking third running back? We maybe if with the way this could be quite good for receivers, get a good receiver talent, especially for the third round. What are we leaning towards ideally here, lads? Oh, here we go.
Okay,
quick fire receivers. The game's just changed.
A run of receivers there. We've got Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, DeAndre Hopkins, and Julio Jones all going back to back to back to back.
That changes the question, I think, Matt, a little bit.
Yeah, the timing of that was almost perfect.
I was going to say, because I had the answer in my head, and but that's thrown it up in the air a little bit.
And Lamar Jackson off the board.
So, Sam,
Jackson.
if that was the first quarterback taken there, would you agree with taking there? Because this, to me, the way he's done it here is reactive to taking, to Swaggy taking Paddy Mahomes. Would you say this is a good
I don't necessarily have an issue with taking Lamar Jackson at the back of the second, start of the third. just because there is a very good chance, because of that rushing baseline that he offers, there is a chance that he can very much, and like for a lot of people, if you'd have drafted Lamar Jackson in the late second, early third round last year, he actually returned on that value. Personally, I don't want to do it because from a rushing standpoint, carry standpoint from a quarterback, you can't predict those things. It's not as simple as you get carries. So I don't like it there. However, I don't want to be the guy who comes out and says that's a terrible pick because he's done it before. He can do it again. That could very well return the value.
I think for this year, it's just second round for me is too early. There's good talent and good picks, productive picks that you can get very late round. But it's a preference thing. But we've had the first tight end off the board, Travis Kelce, going at the 211. Followed up now with Chris Carson to close out the second round. So some interesting picks. It's got a bit more varied here. We did have the run on receivers, Jackson and Kelce. So it has kind of gone how you'd expect after a running back heavy start.
Wow, that was a quick pick there from Rohan.
So followed up with Kittle to start the third, and Chris Godwin as the
I like that pick.
Third round.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, I was hoping the way this was falling that we might be able to take a swing if he'd come back to the back end of this, because that would have been exceptional value. But now...
So Melvin Gordon, Kenny Golladay, David Johnson, Jonathan Taylor, all off of the board. So we're now what, 3 picks away from getting back on the board. There are still running backs up on the board who I think could be very productive this season. You've got Le'Veon Bell still on the board. Todd Gurley is still on the board, who I think could have a high touchdown upside.
As a flex where we've got 2 backs locked in, so the injury concern isn't as high. It's tempting, but I'm keeping an eye on Mike Evans.
I was just about to say,
might
Mike
fall.
Evans is sat there.
I doubt it. If he gets to us, it's...
I was going to say, just looking at the way that Ryan and the fellow after Ryan have drafted, they both gone 2 running backs early.
You'd expect.
They should go receiver here. Thielens on the board as well. So it's,
then after that, we've got Odell, Allen Robinson, Amari Cooper. There's some names still floating. We could get a nice sort of bit of receiver talent here.
So Gurley's off the board.
Okay.
I must admit, for Adam McGuinness, who's drafting here, he's gone Derrick Henry, Devontae Adams, and Todd Gurley to start. That is a really nice little call for a team. That I think that's very well done to be drafting in the middle of a draft to kind of pick up that value is
Solid.
good.
It's definitely a solid start to a team.
So,
now, what is...
It's got to be receiver
with
for
Edwards-Helaire and James Conner. That's a high-risk backfield for me. There's some unpredictability to that. That could come out very good, but there's also a little bit of unknown.
So he could potentially then go for a third running back here, just to give him a bit of stability.
Personally,
at
I'd
least.
want a third guy, but there it is, the Mike Evans pick off the board.
Prove me wrong.
So with Mike Evans off the board at this point now, if he comes to us at the next pick, so Adam Thielen gone, we're sat on the clock, I'm going to start off the discussion, and I'm going to throw Le'Veon Bell into the mix. I think we've got 2 running backs that we're happy with. At this point, the stars for most of the other positions are gone. Let's just load up on the most valuable position in fantasy football. And let's get, I would say, let's take Le'Veon Bell. He's a starting running back who's going to get 250 plus.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And also, again, just because of the way we're sat in the draft, there's receivers there who are on the board, but they will fall back to us in 5 picks' time. So I 100% agree with you with the Lev Bell pickup here.
Yeah, I think I'm happy to go Lev Bell. The Adam Gase factor worries me. It worries me in Dynasty, it worries me in this one, but I think at this spot where we're at, I think it's, as a flex guy, happy to lock in that Lev Bell pick, and we'll see what falls back to us.
So I'm kind of hoping that either Odell Beckham Jr., Amari Cooper, or Calvin Ridley fall to us.
So Allen Robinson, Amari Cooper, and Mark Ingram going off to close the third and start the fourth. We're 1 pick off Odell potentially here, but we've also got Calvin Ridley, DJ Moore, Cooper Kupp. There's some good receivers floating here.
AJ Brown is gone. So this is where we need to decide. I think we're all in agreement that we probably want to go receiver here.
Yep, I
want to lock in our receiver one.
Yep. So now it's who do we think is going to have the biggest season? Calvin Ridley, for me, I think has got the potential to have a massive breakout year, but I would actually see DJ Moore or Cooper Kupp I would put above him.
Yep.
However, Odell Beckham sat there, and I know people said, but I mean, he had a down year last year, and he still went for over 1,000 yards. And in the
really
fourth round,
as a fourth round pick,
Yeah.
I'm happy to go Odell. For me, it's between Odell and DJ Moore.
Okay, so I was going to put a Cooper Cup in the as my choice here, but 2 votes for OBJ.
What I'd be thinking here is that could we potentially have a look at Robert Woods as it slides back, depending on how people draft. I think.
Yeah.
So are we thinking Odell here then? Are we all?
I think.
I would say based on the consensus, yeah.
I'm liking the look at the moment. I mean, our third and fourth picks, Lev Bell and Odell, slight bit of gamble, bit of risk to it, but there's definitely some reward and a nice core we've got building here. One thing to keep track of, we've got 2 players currently on a bye week in week 9, Odell and Mixon.
Okay.
Which is something to keep track of, that we don't want to stock up on too many of the same bye weeks. But luckily, different positions, and at the moment, our 3 main running backs all got different bye weeks, so we're pretty comfortable currently.
Yeah.
So Cam Akers and Leonard Fournette.
What do we make of that one? Fournette.
It's bold. I think he should win the job out.
Yeah. And they just cut Dario Agumbawale as well, so he projects, I think, to be the main back in Tampa.
You nailed that name as well.
Yeah, it was very well said. Sam.
Yeah, give him credit there, mate. That was incredible.
It's another risky running back, though. For that same team of Clyde Edwards-Helaire, James Conner, and Fournette, it's a gamble in that room. Quick fire picks now.
Interesting. DJ Moore, Juju go off the board. Kind of, that's a round where we'd expect them to go. The next one, though, very interesting to me. I know it's a bit of your guy here, James. Mark Andrews went off the board with the 8th pick in the 4th round. I think that's a reach. I don't know what you guys think.
Too early for me.
Way too early. I think you're spot on there.
He's going to be productive, and he should be in that top 3. And who knows, if he has a good enough year, he could work up towards those next 2, towards Kittle and Kelsey. But for me, I wouldn't want to be taking him in the 4th. There's much better options. He's not someone that you would expect to return the value.
Yeah. At that spot, especially when straight after him went Calvin Ridley, and Calvin Ridley will return that value, I think.
And there goes Cooper Kupp. A name I'm keeping an eye on here is DJ Chark. If he could fall to us at the 5'10", that could be a very nice pickup.
And I think he might.
I was actually thinking Tyler Lockett.
Yeah,
if Tyler Lockett gets there,
I think Chark's going to be the focal point, and he's already shown him and Minshew can do it. Whereas I think there's a little bit more risk on targets with Lockett as DK Metcalf emerges. But
there is the chance, though, that there is a much greater chance that Jacksonville are a very bad team, whereas the Seahawks are going to be a good team.
There goes DK at the 4-11, so we're about to close out the 4th round now.
So after this pick, I would like you guys to give me who you think is the best team thus far.
And it's Singletary.
Okay, so Singletary's the last pick. Who would you say maybe exclude us because we could be biased?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, other than us, at this point, I'm actually really liking the look of first overall's team. Christian McCaffrey, you can't go wrong with. I think Chris Carson he's a player that he gets a lot of carries and he's productive. George Kittle, I actually have no issue taking him there with everything else that was off the board. You lock up that position, you don't have to worry about tight end. Devin Singletary projects to be have a breakout year in that offense, and now they've jumped the gun, and at 5-1 they took Tyler Lockett. So I'm really liking the look of that team now.
I think for me, it's the guys picking at 7th. We've got Derrick Henry, Devontae Adams, Todd Gurley, and DJ Moore. I think it's a very nice start to a team there. But yeah, so to start off the 5th, as Sam said, we've got Tyler Lockett just gone, and now Raheem Mostert. So we'll see what comes out of the 5.
That's a tricky one, because I really like for fantasy that week where you have someone who goes off in a Shanahan system. You love having him on your team, but I mean that could be anyone in that Shanahan system.
And another quick fire run of picks here as we've hit this sort of a chunk of auto pick throughout the middle. As we've had Zach Ertz go at the 5-3. DJ Chark at the 5-4, Robert Woods at 5-5, and Terry McLaurin at 5-6. So we're getting through a heavy amount of the receivers now, and the main 4 tight ends are all off the board. I'm looking at this and I'm thinking I would quite like here to lock out a 4th running back, because there's a few guys who are a little bit shallow there that have gone quite receiver heavy. So I think we could start to lock some other people out a little bit here, but also just secure it and sometimes run 4 running backs on some weeks, because there's some great mid-round receiver talent. But that's just
Okay,
my
so-
personal kind of
so
preference.
So
currently.
what
left
running
up
back
then?
are you thinking? Because I'm looking at David Montgomery at this point.
100%
and-
that is the name I'm looking at currently.
Yeah. So David Montgomery, because I was going to suggest that our next pick, depending on who they fall to, it's either David Montgomery or Keenan Allen. Because Keenan Allen's still on that board, and then suddenly you've got 2 number 1 receivers and 3 starting running backs out of the first 5 picks in a draft, which I really like.
Yeah. Or even T.Y.
Keenan
Hilton.
Allen's, yeah, either of those names. So Kareem Hunt just gone off
Okay.
the board.
Interesting that Kareem Hunt goes before David Montgomery, so a backup going before Montgomery. That speaks a lot to what people think Chicago are going to be like this year,
Yeah.
and how frustrating David Montgomery is as a fantasy player. I mean, for last year, I'm a big Montgomery fan. I think he's incredibly talented, but he does have some issues with returning on what you expect from him.
But the upside for us here is, so the next pick is went Keenan Allen at the 5'8", Kyler Murray at the 5'9", so Kyler Murray the third quarterback off the board. We're now here with the 10th pick in the 5th round. We've got 3 running backs already, and so if we're taking Montgomery, we're not looking at him to be even our running back 2. He's a guy that's to be sat around our flex option, which I think in the 5th round is great. Looking through the list as well, it's really after this, it's into very much middle ground, not sure what you get in timeshare running backs. But what are you guys leaning with us coming back round as well in 4 picks?
I'm thinking with us coming back round, might be an idea to take away T.Y. Hilton now, because I think there's a greater chance that T.Y. Hilton returns value. We take him now, and then we hope Montgomery comes back to us. But if Montgomery doesn't come back to us, I think that you'll be able to find similar value, maybe not from another running back, from receiver.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to come back round to us. Just looking at the guy next to us needs another running back. I think he should take him next. And I think I really do want to pick up T.Y. Hilton, but just on position, I think we should go Montgomery.
So 2 for
David Montgomery it is then.
And just pray.
So
once
again, core of running backs we've got currently is sitting very nicely. Joe Mixon, Kenyon Drake, Lev Bell, and David Montgomery is a very nice start. And now I think we need to start really just lock out our wide receivers here.
If T.Y. Hilton falls to us, I think we take him. If not, Cortland Sutton's still sat there.
100%.
And I really want a piece of that team.
Yeah, definitely in agreement with that one. Another name that could be coming round, this is maybe more looking towards one of our next picks. It's just a high risk, bit more of a high risk guy. You've got, this is around where Antonio Gibson at the 75th, so he would be expected on ADP to go sort of anywhere during that sort of 6th to 7th. Just a name to keep an eye on if he falls to us as a bit of late season value where we don't need him to come in and play week 1 with what we've got.
Yep,
name
exactly.
to keep an eye on at the moment with everything going on down in Washington. So
No,
now
completely
what are we
agree
going
with
to
that.
see here at the 5'11"?
I think we may have thrown him off.
I think that was probably his pick. If
think
Hilton
he's running
falls to us
back.
here, we've got a very nice start to this team.
Yeah. I'm really liking the fact that we've got 4 running backs, all of whom would probably be considered the starters.
Gronk.
Interesting. I think that is a terrible pick.
I'm not a big fan. I'd rather have OJ if I'm having a tight end from the Bucks for this year.
Yeah, I'm staying away from Gronk as well, probably.
So Gronk at the 5'11", Russell Wilson to close out the 5th, Ronald Jones, first pick of the 6th round, so going a little bit after Leonard Fournette, and then Dak Prescott at the 6'2".
Double QB.
I think we've got to lock up T.Y. Hilton and ask ourselves how the hell we've got T.Y. Hilton in the 6th round of a draft.
Well, I mean, it helps that we've had a guy here go Patrick Mahomes in the 2nd and Dak Prescott in the 6th. It's bold.
Interesting.
It's
a strategy.
Marquise Brown following Hilton. If Hilton wasn't there, Marquise Brown was a name I was going to throw out there.
Oh, yeah, I like that.
I mean, James the Ravens fan, I'm
Hollywood!
sure would have been on.
Oh yeah, I
on
would
side with
love that. I would.
This is shaping up very nicely so far for us. I think,
that's a very interesting. I just want to talk a bit more about the guy who's drafting after us. So the 111. His team currently consists of Miles Sanders in the 1st round, which I think is an okay pick. Patrick Mahomes in the 2nd round, which, whilst I don't necessarily agree with, I can see the thinking behind it. Allen Robinson, who I'm very surprised with, especially with Amari Cooper still on the board, I believe, when he drafted at that point, which I don't get. AJ Brown, I understand that pick there, but then Rob Gronkowski and Dak Prescott. That is a very interesting team. 1 running back in the first 6 rounds. That is bold.
What I'm thinking this could be a little bit. I don't agree with it as a strategy, but maybe obviously taking Patrick Mahomes and Dak Prescott on the back of it, almost just trying to limit some quarterback talent. It's
a bold strategy.
It's a strategy, not necessarily a good one, but it is a strategy you
Yeah,
see. It's
but it
people
is
just
a
trying to lock
strategy.
out positions. We'll see. I mean, it could have come out if Patrick Mahomes goes down. Anything happens there, and especially this year with COVID and everything. Who knows?
Yep.
It might turn out to be alright. It's a different year to be drafting for, but I wouldn't do it personally. But DeAndre Swift has just gone as the 5th pick in the 6th round. So another time check with Adrian Peterson going to Detroit today. This is that
He is
same
going to
team
steal carries.
with Edwards-Helaire, Connor, Fournette, and now Swift. I mean, I guess if you're going to have the risky backs, you need enough of them. But it's
Do they still have carry on? They've still got carry on
Yes,
Johnson there
they
as
do.
well, who is no slouch of a running back. That's 3 guys that all deserve carries there now. So again, that's someone that I probably would be airing away from in most of my drafts, just because who knows who's going to be in what role come Sunday.
I'm surprised that Cortland Sutton is still sat here.
Still loitering, yeah. I don't think he'll come back around to us, but
Oh no, I mean, if he does, it's ridiculous at that point.
Yeah.
this
But I imagine he should go because we're just about to come into after this next pick at the 6th pick. It's then the 7th, 8th, and 9th, which are all auto picks. So unless they've got a different draft board, I imagine we'll see Sutton and Diggs and names like that going off. But
it's a shame Darren Waller was going to go, because I was actually going to suggest if Darren Waller... Yep, so there goes Darren Waller, Stephon Diggs, Cortland Sutton, as predicted. J.K. Dobbins off the board just before them. I'd be interested to see... I kind of want your opinion on this, James. Who do you think's a more productive running back from a fantasy standpoint in the Baltimore offense, Dobbins or Ingram?
It depends on what week you're talking. I think early doors, it'll be Ingram. Give Dobbins time to develop into the system, into the league. I think he'll start coming into it and being the main guy. Maybe 7 or 8 weeks into the season. So this season it's a bit more risky to answer that question, because it really does depend on which part of the season we're talking about.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
So what are we hoping for? Are we thinking? I think another receiver personally. I think now that Darren Waller's gone, I think we can leave our tight end a few rounds longer.
Yeah, agreed.
Because the tier that go here, so if you've got your names like Evan Ingram, but there's a lot of risk to that. If we're taking Evan Ingram, I would want another late round tight end to back him up. But I think anyway, personally, I'm an advocate for us taking 2 tight ends.
Hayden Hurst at this spot is the one name that I would suggest is he's a risky pick because he might be very meh. But if we can get him maybe on the turn pick, so not on the 7th, but in the 8th round, Hayden Hurst, because he could explode.
I agree with that. I think I've vocalised this viewpoint many a time that
I'm very happy with Hayden Hurst. If we could get him at that early in the 8th, essentially, it's could be a little bit early for him.
But I don't think
I'd be happy paying it. I think, and then so to close off the 6th, we've had Philip Lindsay go Zach Moss at the 6-11, which I think he's going to get a lot of goal line carries, and there's been rumours about Singletary and a bit of a fumbling issue this off-season, so who knows, there could be some upside there. So now who are we going to have here to close out the 6th round? Could it be a quarterback?
Interesting. Don't you think how mad it is that almost the disrespect on Philip Lindsay's name, that he's going so late in drafts? I mean, to be the 10th pick in the 6th round. Yes, I know that Melvin Gordon's there, but I mean, this is a guy who's come into the league undrafted and put up back-to-back 1,000 rushing yard years.
There it is.
Surely he will get carries.
You'd think, but the interesting thing, the guy that took him has also got Melvin Gordon. So his
I
only
was just
2
seeing
running
that.
backs are double stacking that Broncos tandem, which don't know.
It's a bold strategy for sure.
So now we're getting a run on quarterback team. So we had Will Fuller to close out the 6th round, start the 7th. We've had Deshaun Watson and then Tom Brady.
Interesting, gone for the stack with the Will Fuller Deshaun Watson pick. Very, very high risk, high reward kind of thing, because if Will Fuller goes down injured, that could be a real issue. But if he comes out playing like we know he can play with Deshaun Watson, that could be a lethal pairing.
And as well, we've got another stack of Chris Godwin and Tom Brady for the team picking 2nd.
Yeah.
So that's shaping into an okay team at the moment.
It's one of the better ones, I think.
Not quite ours, but it's getting...
I mean, yeah, it's hard
I'm
to
feeling
pass
quite
ours.
confident with this. I really like our draft so far.
Yeah, I think we've, especially for where we're drafting, I think to be at that the kind of 110 at the back end of the first round is personally not where I usually like to be, just because I want to get kind of the marquee guys in. I'm happy. I want to be picking in the first 3 picks, to be honest. But to be able to get this kind of value and this kind of team at the back end of the draft, I think is almost unheard of.
Yeah, I think
So now to keep going with the 7th, we've had Deebo Samuel at the 7-3, Devontae Parker at the 7-4, Marlon Mack at the 7-5, and Matt Ryan at the 6th pick in the second round.
Well, if Matt Ryan's anything to go off of, and his kind of past career is, then I think he's due a year to be like the number 2 overall fantasy quarterback.
In which case, this is a great
pick.
pickup.
Pattern for it. It could be very upside sort of pick. So now, what are we looking at? There's 3 picks, and then us. Looking now, currently, the top names on ADPs: AJ Green, Michael Gallup, Antonio Gibson, Drew Brees, Evan Ingram. Any of those names jump to you? I think for me, Gallup is one that if we could take him, could be a very nice option. It is quite a stacked offense.
Who's just gone? Is that AJ Green? Okay, yeah. I was expecting him to go. I was going to say if AJ Green fell to us, we have to take AJ Green just because he's the number 1 guy on that offense, even though I don't think they're going to necessarily be very good. So Antonio Gibson's off the board.
Antonio Gibson.
Ooh,
we've got Gallup here. We've got one name I want to keep an eye on. This would probably be more for after the turn, but Brandon Cooks. If we could get Gallup and Cooks here to round out that as a receiver.
I would prefer Cooks over Gallup. Because I think Cooks has got less to compete with.
Yeah.
Yep. James, where's your feeling on that one? I'm happy with either guy in either order.
Yeah, I think Cooks might be the play here. Are we then also committing to Hayden Hurst on the next pick as well?
I would then commit to Hayden Hurst.
Is currently looking like on ADP he would go in between our next ones.
I think that's the move then.
So we think Cooks and then Hayden Hurst is what we're looking for.
Cooks, Hayden Hurst,
yeah.
That is shaping up to be a very good roster.
One thing, if we're taking Hayden Hurst, a name I'd like us to keep an eye on for later rounds would be OJ Howard for the Bucks.
Yep.
It's just a backup. I personally want 2 tight ends for this year with everything going on. I think there could be some ups there. And a defense at the end of the 7th.
And a kicker.
And a kicker.
Oh my God.
Okay. This guy is either like very drunk or he's trolling. I don't know.
Are we locking in Hayden Hurst and then we'll sort of review?
Lock in my boy. Lock in my boy.
Hayden Hurst in as our starting tight end. So yes, we've got the guy picking behind us who's already got Mahomes and Prescott has now gone for the Steelers and Justin Tucker. So I mean if you're going to take a defense and a kicker, they're all right ones to take as the first off the board, just not this early. But here come the panic picks.
This is something you should never do.
I think as well, one from my mocks is potentially as a defense to keep an eye on if we just want to pick one with pretty much our last pick or second to last, is the Bucks as a very late round defensive pickup.
Yep, there's a couple of players.
Defense.
Yeah, I can see that.
There's a couple of players that I've heard some things coming out about that defense. I believe I mentioned their second round pick, safety out of Minnesota, whose name is evading me at this point. But I've heard very good. Yeah, and Antoine Winfield Jr. So I've heard some very good things about how well he's adapting to the NFL level and how he's still that just ball hawk that he was in college. So that's things that I love hearing.
Josh Allen in the 8th, I think. The running baseline he's got there.
I really like Josh Allen.
I think that's a very nice pick.
I don't know who's going to come next now.
We're about to get into that run, that auto-picking run in the middle, when the top guys currently sat there are Drew Brees, Jordan Howard, Tyler Boyd, and Kerryon Johnson.
There's a few people.
Tyler Boyd was one of the players that I was going to mention when we were kind of having that third wide receiver discussion. Tyler Boyd, for me, has tremendous upside that kind of relies on the COVID factor or the injury factor. I think he's a kind of player who, if AJ Green goes down, which we know he has the propensity to do, Tyler Boyd could come in and be big. Tyler Boyd's a very, very talented player. He's probably not a 1, but he is a 1B.
So following on from Josh Allen, we've had Drew Brees at the 8-6 and the auto picks of Jordan Howard, Aaron Rodgers, and Tyler Boyd gone. So currently there's only 2 teams with no quarterback.
I don't think Drew Brees will return on that value.
No, I don't like that.
Yeah,
pick
it
there.
does
I
feel
think
like a
one
reach.
thing for us. I know a name we did say. That obviously, we're looking at. How's his name's gone? Giants quarterback. Daniel Jones.
Yeah.
God, name's left me, but I think
Number
with
one
a lot of
scoring
names going off,
quarterback.
I think if we could potentially stack Daniel Jones and Jared Goff as two almost back-to-back 11th and 12th kind of round picks and just secure the quarterback position, because there is a little bit of a gamble
Yep.
either side.
No,
So if we could lock both of them
I agree
in,
with that.
that could be,
I
because we've
agree
got
with
all
that.
our skill
In
positions.
fact, you know
almost.
what might be quite a nice stack to have is if we can pick up Slayton, Daniel Jones, and Slayton.
Yeah.
Because I think of the receivers in that kind of wide receiver core, Slayton's got the path to be the big bust, like the big boom guy.
Yeah.
So that could be something. Maybe that 11th, 12th round, we take a gamble on the
we've
turn.
got 7
pull the
picks
trigger on them.
left currently. So I think if we're looking at that we're saying we're going to at some point during that have Slayton, Perriman, Daniel Jones, and Jared Goff. Defense kicker, that leaves us one sort of spare pickup, and I think maybe we get one more running back at somewhere here at least, just so we've got a spare if we want to run 4 a week.
Because how many have you got now? We've got
Bryce Love.
4 running backs?
Yes,
For
Bryce
that
Love.
guy.
Okay. So I think we've kind of got a rough plan of the guys we want on the back end here. And then we'll let James take his choice for the brand kicker
Oh, yes. That's what
with
I'm
our
here for.
last pick.
That is my pick.
They better have a good nickname. I'm liking Greg the Leg. Just because, what a nickname.
So CeeDee Lamb was the 8-10. So now we're way on
Okay.
the last 2 picks in the 8th round.
Ooh, this-
Intrigued.
CD Lamb's a really tricky one for me because I just in general this year I don't really want to be drafting rookie receivers because receivers usually take a while to get into the league, and then you've had everything with COVID, which is going to slow that down. But CeeDee Lamb, not only is he dealing with that, but he's dealing with Amari Cooper in front of him and Michael Gallup as well. It's not like he's coming in and he's going to be the number 2. He's going to have to fight for touches, which, when you're at the disadvantage of having the COVID and the reduced training camp, that makes me really wary of him from a fantasy standpoint.
Yeah, definitely. So now to start off the 9th, we've had Emmanuel Sanders, Marvin Jones Jr., Julian Edelman, James White, Latavius Murray, and Hunter Henry.
Hunter
Off
Henry.
the board for the first 6
Double
picks
tight end
here.
there.
Yeah, tight end stack. Darren Waller and Hunter Henry. That's quite a nice stack.
Not
to have.
bad.
So what are we looking at? So we're again 3 picks, and then it'll be us. What are we looking for here then? Which are the names that we've mentioned a few bit pieces that we like. Any names jumping off the board for you guys currently?
Oh, I want to sort of go towards a running back, I think, but
I think it's a bit early
it's
to kind of
tough.
take the pick at the running back because you're in the realm with the running backs now where you're taking a stab in the dark effectively at a guy that you think has the upside. Kind of like my belief that I think Bryce Love has got the real potential now that he's probably the number 2 in that offense.
Mm-hmm.
He is a COVID away. He is a nasty injury away. He's a couple of fumbles away from getting given the opportunity, and I like the talent. But I don't want to draft him in the 9th round because I think he's less likely to deliver on that. I think someone like Slayton could be a consideration here, although there's probably some other wide receivers that have got the ability to return on that a bit better. But I think now's when we start thinking about those guys that are going to Perriman, Slayton, things like that we just take off the board.
You make me sick.
Now, Perriman will be, I think, a little bit later still, but...
I mean,
So
who
looking
have
at
we
the
got left
names
on the
that we're
board at
talking
wide
about
receiver?
quickly, the names that we've sort of mentioned of OJ, Bryce Love, Perriman, Goff, Jones, and Slayton, that would be 6 picks, and we've got 7 left. So then we'd be looking at potentially drafting the defense. We're going to have to drop someone before the season to be sort of streaming our kickers in and about. So there's going to be a name that misses out there, and I think I'd say potentially I'd rather have Slayton over Perriman. If that's how we're playing.
I'd rather get rid of Goff out of that list, if I'm honest. If we're sticking with Danny Jones, Goff's only the backup.
My
I'm happy
problem
to
is the
take one
first 4
quarterback.
weeks, though. We're going to potentially against some very tough defenses. We almost won't have a quarterback. Potentially, they're against brutal defenses.
Who have we got left on the board at receiver? Is there anyone that would stand out above Slayton?
Deontay Johnson, McCole Hardman, quite like Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy, Slayton, Christian Kirk.
Ooh.
Could be quite a nice pickup. Sterling Shepard, Deshaun Jackson. I think there's some risky
I
ones
like
here.
Darius Slayton in there.
Yeah.
I think the Christian Kirk thing does stand out to me, but that the volume could not be there, and he's a guy that needs more volume, whereas Slayton doesn't need the volume to be productive.
So I think here maybe we go Slayton, and then I think looking at the order of where things go, I don't know. I think if we want specific names like where we've sort of mentioned Bryce Love, things like that, this is a time where it's the late round picks. We just want to get the guys that we want.
This is our guy, innit? That's what it is.
So if that's what we're thinking, I think we jump on that. Looking at the order here, we've got our next pick, and then Daniel Jones pops up, potentially going just short. So do we just take Daniel Jones, lock in the quarterback we want, and then kind of adapt from there?
I
Because
think
it
we
would
do that.
still be early for Bryce Love.
I'm happy to do that. 10th round, it's a late round guy. I'm happy to do that.
One other option, just seeing a name crop up of Carson Wentz still on the round on the board. The Mr. Consistent is the one thing with him. He always finishes alright, but I think there is more upside to Jones.
If he's healthy.
Yeah, I was going to say consistently injured.
He's healthy.
Missed less games than Deshaun Watson, though.
Well, injury's still a concern for me.
But still, it is a concern.
Over Danny Jones.
So Mecole Hardman gone off the board. I think at this point we'd pull the trigger on Daniel Jones.
I think there's
just to
people...
compare the names as well. We've got Wentz, Stafford, Daniel Jones, Cam Newton, Ben Roethlisberger, Joe Burrow, Jared Goff, Baker Mayfield still lurking there. So we say go Daniel Jones, and I think I want to back that up with another quarterback before the end of this draft if we're taking Jones.
I'd be happy with that. I'd take Daniel Jones now, and I'd actually then wait and see who's available with either our last or second to last pick. And if Cam Newton's there at our 12th round or 13th round pick, you pull the trigger.
I mean, there's still only a couple of people who need a quarterback still, so I think we'll have good options. At that
so
point.
Harrison Butker has just gone, another kicker.
Oh yeah.
Kansas City Chief kicker. I think that's probably a relatively smart pick, for as smart as you can for picking a kicker in the 10th round. They're going to score a lot of points, so he's probably going to get the opportunity to kick a lot of balls.
Yeah.
Still feels like a bit of a reach though.
Still early doors.
Yeah.
I think people got quite sensible. It was good. We saw the couple of defenses go, and people didn't jump on it too hard and kind of panic, and we saw like 4 fly off the ball, which
it's a relief. It's a relief.
So Deontay Johnson off the board. I think Deontay Johnson this year could have that kind of, maybe not to the same extent of Juju's second year, when you just have that massive breakout. But Deontay Johnson, if Juju comes back and is playing good football, Deontay Johnson has that ability. And I think now that they've got a proper quarterback playing, he could be a real value there.
So the run we've had after that is Tyler Higbee, Damian Harris, Chase Edmonds, Henry Ruggs, and then the Patriots defense at the 10th pick in the 10th round.
Okay.
Interesting thing, we got the 4th pick. Ralph says no quarterback yet. Maybe looking to stream on the season.
Which isn't a bad strategy.
Very heavy receiver draft currently. So it'd be interesting
I think
to see how
that's
managed.
great value. Henry Ruggs in the 10th. He's probably the only rookie receiver that I'm starting to kind of... I know when we spoke Las Vegas, I kind of buried him.
Yeah.
But as time's gone on and they've... Yeah, but as time's gone on and
in 2 weeks.
Rookies have just had less and less opportunity because cancelling off seasons, all that kind of thing. For a fantasy standpoint, I still don't think it's the best position for Ruggs, and I don't think he will necessarily have the best year or he's in the best position for him. But from a fantasy standpoint, he might just get force-fed targets. Which
and you never doubted the talent; you only doubted the matchup of him in Las Vegas.
I don't think it's the best place for him. But from a fantasy standpoint, there's a very real possibility that he just gets fed a shed load of targets because there's nobody else to give the targets to, other than Darren Waller.
So we'll see who goes here. I think this may be an auto pick again, potentially.
Which could be then a second quarterback.
Rohan has been...
He's sort of been dipping in and out of picking and auto picking.
Oh, he's just come... Oh, that's unlucky. Just signed in.
And it's taken
And he's Carson Wentz.
Wentz and Brady as a stack actually could be quite effective at times. There's risks to both of them.
There go the Ravens off the board in the defense.
And another kicker.
It's
not bad. Christian
Kirk in the 11th. What a way.
Value.
I tell you, this draft is a prime example of how home leagues can fall in ways that you would not expect. You will, in leagues, you will have someone who takes a wide receiver at the 3rd overall pick. You will have someone who takes Patrick Mahomes in the 2nd and then Dak Prescott in the 6th. Like, these will happen. And what you need to really do when you're watching this is to, like Matt said earlier, you don't get caught up in the runs of these things. You don't let it move away from your plan, and you make sure you capitalize on those players, because for every time that someone takes a Dak Prescott in the 6th round, that slides someone else down the board one ranking. So you've got to be able to capitalize.
I think that's why we did benefit in our first 2 picks with that the Michael Thomas pickup.
Yeah.
Yes.
Really happy.
I think our team's fallen very nicely. I'm feeling quite happy with it now. We've locked out the full starting roster. Started to put a few names in the bench. So we've got 3 more bench spots, kicker and defense left to take. So those 3 more bench spots currently would be looking at whoever we go with as a 2nd quarterback. Hopefully Cam Newton if he falls at the right spot. Bryce Love, and then I would personally, 2nd tight end, potentially OJ Howard. We'll see what names are floating about.
Jerry Jeudy. It's another wide receiver there.
So Duke Johnson, Jerry Jeudy, Tony Pollard, and Matthew Stafford running off the board at the next picks. We've got
Matthew Stafford could have some real value this year. Matthew Stafford is one of those guys. I put him kind of in that same tier as Daniel Jones this year, who for fantasy is going to be a late round value, but he's got the route to being a top 3 quarterback on the year just through passing volume, and he could throw a lot of touchdowns.
100%. So that's interesting. So what are we thinking here? As our 11th round pick, we know the kind of guys we're looking at. I think I'd be leaning maybe this is where we do Bryce Love. Either that, or we do just take the Cam Newton pickup, as he is lurking around there on ADP wise. But is anyone else going to take him? Is the question.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I think he'll fall to
I
us.
don't think anyone's going to be looking at Cam Newton. I think that. Yeah, I think either the Bryce Love pickup.
Yep, I'd agree with that.
At that point, just because he's a guy that I think would be really nice to have on the roster. We might drop him after a couple of weeks because it doesn't look like he's going to get the touches. But he's a talented guy who is not far off. I think he's going to get touches, but if he looks better than the other running backs there at that time, then I think he'll get a lot of touches.
So he would be coming in as our 5th running back. We've already got four receivers, 4 running backs locked in. So I think it's not too much of a gamble. We're not relying on him too heavily. This is just pure, kind of similar to Slayton. Do we get some upside from him? So I think we're all in agreement with that as the next pickup then.
Yep.
Unless someone beats us.
The only other guy that I've just noticed that might be a bit of a spanner in the works is Darrell Henderson Jr. is actually still on the board. And I know they drafted Cam Akers in LA, but I mean, there is investment in Darrell Henderson Jr. and he was getting touches last year.
True.
Is that something potentially that if Cam Akers doesn't actually look that good, Darrell Henderson's the next guy?
That's definitely a name to say. It's two similar situations.
Yes.
There's more investment in Cam Akers. And I would say Cam Akers is
but
more likely to win a job than Antonio
talented.
Gibson. And then when you bring it down to then the situation though as well, which offense would you rather have a piece of is another question. So this is very difficult now between those two names. I think
I'm torn. I'm really torn.
I'd say I'm almost kind of 60-40, but on the side of Darrell Henderson. But it depends, because if Cam Akers comes out and plays well, then suddenly you haven't got. So I think it's a more risky pick. I kind of think I could be convinced either way.
I think there's a chance that Bryce Love might get more consistent touches in his offense.
But I think Bryce Love it's one of your typical cases of there's a guy at a spot and it's sort of your guy in a way. Yeah, and I think for you,
I've been on the Bryce Love kind of hype train since he was drafted. I know when he was the 4th round pick in the end, and he fell off from kind of his heights while he was at Stanford. But I think the talent is there, and I think the touches are going to be there now that Adrian Peterson's gone, because I don't think Antonio Gibson is going to be a workhorse.
So we'll lock that one in then. Lock in the Bryce Love pick.
You've got to get your guy. That's it.
So now we've got 4 picks left, and I think this is the point where. How do you guys want to? I'm thinking this is maybe where we take whatever quarterbacks come, because the 3 we've sort of been speaking about. that it would be whatever quarterback, OJ Howard, and then defense and kicker. Essentially the 4 picks. If we go off what we were talking about, that's where we're looking. What do you think, James? There's a little sigh there.
How many other guys have a quarterback right now?
I think everyone but the 4th pick currently have got their quarterbacks locked in.
See, and that, for me, I would sort of like to wait on that basis, I think. I mean, only one...
So in terms of talents, because obviously, currently we'd look at, we almost got our 4 picks planned out, and they could all almost go, whoever we're taking would be early. Is there anyone outside of the names we've been mentioning then that you're thinking?
Well, apart from Perriman, because that's a risky one. But James Prochet, anyone?
Not
James
a chance.
Prochet?
No.
Not in a redraft.
Right, we're back on the clock then, so we need to pull our heads together here then, boys, and come up with...
I think this is where we take the tight end. I don't think you can justify taking another quarterback at this point.
I've just seen a couple names that are on the board over OJ, and that's Jonnu Smith, Blake Jarwin, both sat there. 2 very intriguing options. Dallas Goddard's still sat there.
I like that.
I would
Smith.
be on the Blake Jarwin. I'd be on the Blake Jarwin
on that conversation.
Hype train.
I
think he's gonna get the targets there.
So as we lock him in, Blake Jarwin,
yeah, I can agree with that, actually.
That's a lot of upside at tight end, and we only need one of them to hit.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna get another quarterback fall to us at this point, but I don't think we need to. We've got a guy, and it's a streaming position. We preach this all the time when we talk fantasy football on the podcast. It's right. You can stream the quarterback, so I'm less concerned if a quarterback doesn't fall to us that we like.
It depends on the first 4 weeks.
For the first 4 weeks, I'd rather get our choice of guy now as opposed to something switching up, because I personally would not feel comfortable, especially for maybe the first or 2 with Daniel Jones. After we get past that nightmare schedule of the first 4 weeks, then I'm happy to roll with him.
Well, let's see who falls to us, because we've got 19 picks between now and our next pick.
I think
there's a lot of guys as well still on the
there's
board.
a lot of guys still there. We've still got Cam Newton, Big Ben, Joe Burrow, Jared Goff. I mean, all 4 of those guys, I would be happy starting. I mean, to be honest, Big Ben, I would really like on the roster, because I think he's going to have a big year. I know me and you disagree on that, Matt. But Cam Newton, I'd really like on the roster, because I think he's going to have a big year. Joe Burrow, less swayed by, but Jared Goff, I really like the idea of Jared Goff.
Drew Lock's
still out there.
That's a name I really like, potentially.
And all of those guys as well have different bye weeks of Daniel Jones, which is a plus side as well.
Drew Lock, Cam Newton, or...
So there goes Cam Newton.
For me. So Cam's gone.
Okay.
I think I'm looking at Goff or Drew Lock, I think, personally. But obviously, Big Ben, there is a massive argument there. Especially early doors, because my main concern with Big Ben is him getting injured again. And him as the season goes on. I'm not going to argue the talent and the productivity he can bring in fantasy football. And it might be good to have that sort of old, you know what you should get from him. Compared to Daniel Jones, who could have a sophomore slump. He could flop.
Yes, yeah.
So we need a guy that we can pin our team on. So I think maybe then it's Big Ben or Goff, because it's just a bit more safety, I'd say, from them.
I'd like to see Goff over Big Ben, I think, at that point.
I would be happy to defer and go with Goff in that scenario.
Yeah.
We'll see what falls as well. I mean, there's been people stacking up on quarterbacks, so I mean...
Yeah, you never know.
Who knows?
It's a weird one.
So then off the back of that, we'll have 2 picks left. The defenses that are currently sat there, we've got Vikings, Chargers, Chiefs, Seahawks, Packers, Broncos, Bucks. The top sort of 7 names still resting there. Is there any one of them that jumps out first that obviously we would be looking to take by then? It'd probably be our 14th pick.
It's a tough choice. I like the Chargers there.
I'm not so sure now that we know that Derwin James is out for a long period of time. I think that really hurts. I think they've still got so much talent on that defense, but I think that he's a real tone setter in the way that he plays, and losing that can be like losing the guy rather than just the talent on the field can hurt more than you might expect. Yeah. So the Vikings go off the board.
7th defense to be drafted says 5 more if everyone does take one.
That's the thing. I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, that's a defense that I would like to be starting, But you're in my opinion, you're in streaming territory at that point. So,
yeah.
But I think, who do we really take over it? Like, who would, like, what sort of need or what value? Like, looking at sort of some of the names. I mean,
Chris Thompson's still sat there. Chris Thompson could be a really valuable player. He gets a lot of work in Jacksonville, or not in Jacksonville, but when he was in Washington, he got a lot of work consistently. And his offensive coordinator is his old head coach.
Him and Darrell Henderson both gone to the next guys I was looking at. If we didn't go there, Sammy Watkins as well. A couple more kickers as well.
The only issue we might have with streaming a defense, perhaps, is who do we drop?
This is the problem as well, where we would be starting to get to. I think what I'd be looking at here potentially is that we grab, as we said, Big Ben or Goff, whichever we sort of are feeling when it comes around to us. Bucks on the way back, and then James gets the kicker pick with the 50
Nice.
to close it out. I think the core we've got there. I think I'd rather just lock up solid options that we like. I don't think we need to stream. We don't have any needs currently. We've pretty much got every other.
How many
covered.
wide receivers do we have right now?
We have.
We've got 4,
Slayton,
5?
Odell, and Ty. So we've got 4.
Right.
Currently.
Okay. We've got enough. We've got enough to start with.
Because currently it looks. I think I'd be saying we'll be running heavily 4 running backs, and then maybe depending on game weeks and what happens with Bell and Montgomery, might be swapping one of them out for Cooks here and there. Yeah. Potentially Slayton if he has a bit of a breakout.
Alan Lazard off the board.
So I think we pretty much. Oh, there goes Big Ben. So that does kind of deal with that.
Big Ben.
As long as Goff doesn't go now, then.
But even though then we've still got someone like Drew Lock.
The one other player.
Baker,
the one other
Baker
player
on a bounce back.
The one player that might be considerable at this point is Mike Williams of the Chargers. Heavy touchdown upside guy.
He's lurking there.
Who is sat there in the same way that I think Michael Pittman Jr. Obviously, I'm not drafting Michael Pittman in something like this as a rookie, blah, 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 blah. But Mike Williams has done it before, and he's a big touchdown upside guy, big threat in the red zone.
The question for me then is if we take him, we're going to end up, we'll have to bring in a kicker just before week 1 and drop someone who it's going to be Love or Slayton. So do you prefer Mike Williams to either of them?
So that's the issue, isn't it?
That's the problem we've got.
That's the headache that we're going to have.
I almost think we should stick. We've got the names. For me, I think run it.
I mean, at this point, these players might go undrafted anyway, and then they're on the waiver wire. So we can make that decision after week 1. Well, I think a lot of this, there's going to be probably this time next week, we're going to be making a lot of moves in this league, just because this is one of the most active post-week 1s that there's ever been, just because it's the first time we've seen these players play this season.
The one thing I think there will be a lot to happen for, though, as well, is getting too caught up in that. There's a lot of people that react way too heavily to a big week 1, and then nothing comes of it. Like you've seen it, John Ross is a nightmare for it. So Joe Burrow just gone, which means Goff is there. So if we're looking to take our essentially backup, or for the first 4 weeks our quarterback, depending on what we see from Jones, Jared Goff, Baker Mayfield, Ryan Tannehill, Phillip Rivers, Minshew, Locke, Garoppolo. Is Goff the one?
I think Goff's the one for me.
Yeah, but I would say Goff right now.
I am. Goff and Daniel Jones, I'm very happy with that as our sort of 2 to roll with for the season.
Yep.
I'll take that.
What are we going to see? So on the way back, I guess we'll be looking towards our defense. Chargers are still there. Bucks are sat there as well, which I know me and Sam both seem sort of high on.
I think the Bucks defense could be. They might not be the best defense in the NFL, but I think they could be a high-scoring defense. A lot of takeaways.
And I think they're going to improve quickly. Playing against, you've seen it coming out the way Brady says he expects perfection on every play. And the longer you go throughout the season from that, you've got these guys that are going to... It's a young defense. They all want to be the guy picking him off, making plays, catching Brady's eye. I think the longer you keep that going as well in practice, it's good.
You also can't be... It's very tricky to be a bad defense when you practice week in, week out against a good offense. So if the offense is as good as everyone seems to think they're going to be, then the baseline for what you could expect the defense to be is surely probably a top half defense.
Yeah, and Todd Bowles, is just an aggressive defensive coordinator, which I think is you want someone who's going to be having an active defense, who's going to be trying to get the takeaways, trying to get to the quarterback, playing aggressive football for your fantasy points.
Exactly. So I think the Tampa Bay Bucks is is a pick that I would be more than happy kind of taking a swing at. And then I'll be interested to see who James thinks his kicker's going to be.
Well, I've already had a few kickers come off already, so it makes it a bit more challenging to make that decision.
So
Yeah,
we're back on our pick then.
I've got a suggestion for you, James.
Go on then. Hit me up.
I'm thinking the glasses. We take Rodrigo Blankenship, who it did come out today that he has won the kicking job in Indianapolis.
So quickly, we've got, so this is our 14th pick we're on the clock with now, so we're all in to go Bucks here with the defense, and then we'll figure out our kicker on the way back round.
All in on Buccaneers.
So kickers currently, just to run off the names that are sat there, obviously there's a lot of picks left. Robbie Gould, Young Hoku. I'm too tired for this. I'm shattered. Zane Gonzalez, Jake Elliott, Cummy Fairburn, Dan Bailey, Ryan Suckup, who's just looking like he's won out the job with the Bucks over Matt Gay, but I imagine Brady's going to be quite efficient. I don't know if we'll be seeing too many field goals on that. You kind of want that offense that's going to get in range but not be able to get the ball over the line.
The name that rings out to me is Jake Elliott.
Interesting.
I'm a big fan of Jake Elliott, if I'm honest with you.
I was going to say Dan Bailey just because he is... Dan Bailey, I think he's got one of the highest...
For the Vikings?
Conversion rates. Yeah, for the Vikings. One of the highest conversion rates in history or something. In terms of... And they're a team, to me, that I think the offense is going to be good, but I'm not sure it's going to be great. So there could be a lot of opportunities for kicking.
Well, I think the same for Philly as well, if I'm honest.
The one thing that worries me potentially with Philly is there's already a few injuries creeping up. Are they just going to have another one of those years? Like, it seems like whenever it's almost a 50% chance if you hear that a player's injured in the NFL, oh, is he an Eagle? And that was especially the case last year. But then I can play into it well if they can still, with someone like Wentz, get the ball in the right areas but not be able to convert on it, and then the kicker comes in. So
that's why
I'm split between the two here. I can see the upside for both.
Yeah, and like I say, Sam, Dan Bailey is very accurate. I just prefer Jake Elliott.
Who knows? Our decision might be made for us. There is still quite a few picks before that runs back to us.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So currently, just to give a read off the full team we're currently running with before we round it off with our kicker. We've got Daniel Jones, Joe Mixon, Kenyon Drake, Odell Beckham Jr., T.Y. Hilton, Hayden Hurst, Lev Bell, David Montgomery. The Bucks as our defense. On the bench, we've got Brandon Cooks, Darius Slayton, Bryce Love, Blake Jarwin, and Jared Goff.
What a team!
I'm happy with this, boys. I'm very happy with this.
We've just interesting. We've just had Teddy Bridgewater come off for the guy picking at number 3. I believe was he the last guy to pick? He's got Lamar Jackson.
So it's currently the 4th pick. Ralphs has not yet got his quarterback. Keshawn Vaughn just went off the board for him. Interesting pick there if he's going to come through and have value. He's looking for an injury, I think, in that Bucks backfield.
But in a COVID world, you never know.
In a COVID world, there could be, and that's his 4th string, I believe, at the running back position.
But, I mean, this is one way of drafting that you do just take all the best players at the most valuable positions, which is receiver and running back, and then you stream everything else. Because if you can get the best players at the most valuable positions, and they're where you win the weeks, then everything else can be streamed. You'll get we can see it. You can look at the quarterbacks that are still available on the list, and they're still starting quarterback. Baker Mayfield's still out there. Ryan Tannehill's still out there. Phillip Rivers, Gardner Minshew, Drew Lock. A lot of guys that week to week you're going to be able to pick up off the waiver wire. So you don't necessarily have to draft a quarterback. You don't have to draft a tight end. You don't have to draft a kicker or a defense if your league runs them. The most important positions are your wide receivers and your running backs, because that's where the points come from.
100% agree.
100%. It's interesting to see how everyone rounds out their drafts. Mike Williams does, unless someone grabs him up, potentially look like he'll be going and be streamable. Naeem Hines is an interesting name. I think if this was a PPR league, would have been someone I've maybe would have had a little push for one of these later picks. But I think in half PPR, he might not be as effective.
The interesting thing with Naeem
finally going as well. Sorry to cut you off there. Just to round off the 14th in a team that has George Kittle backing it up with Jonnu Smith, and he also has Deshaun Watson and Baker Mayfield as his quarterbacks. So that's quite a nice roster that's really filling out there.
And Michael Pittman Jr.
Oh, he has
Michael
gone.
Pittman Jr. going off the board. Really like that pick personally.
good
As
value.
he's the kind of guy that would have been on my radar for a pickup in the waiver wire when you need him. I think Michael Pittman Jr. could have a lot of touchdowns this year, and the things Philip Rivers saying about him as well are all really positive.
Yes, the same team that took Naeem Hines, so maybe a bit of a Colts fan over there.
Could
Sort of
be.
getting his potential upside guys with the 14th, 15th. Anything, I think, once you sort of get past that sort of 11th style round of these sort of drafts, you are taking a swing on people. It is a
Yep.
lot more of a gamble, but by then that's where you should be able to, because you've locked out the rest of the core of your roster. So now, who are Jake Elliott and Dan Bailey both going to make
Say,
it back to us?
I think they might. Yeah, I think it's just Ryan who needs a kicker, perhaps. I'm not.
Paris Campbell,
That
he
could be
promises to have the opportunity to really show the talent that he's got, and he has got a lot of talent. And they invested, I believe he was a second-round pick, so he's got some investment in him. Whether he can perform, this is probably the year that he needs to show it. Otherwise, there'll be rumblings of maybe he was a bit of a bust.
Definitely.
This is,
Interesting to see who will.
this is
James,
tense.
who you do have the kicker pick. You are for the brand.
Well, I mean, I don't want
Where's
to
your
swing
head
it, but upon the pun. But I think Jake Elliott for me. But there is the Dan Bailey option, which has a lot of upside as well. So it's at the end of the day, it's just a kicker, you know. We talk about the brand.
It's going to be very streamable.
Yeah, it's
gonna be very
it's one of
One
those.
thing
that-
That's the best thing.
One thing we have
That's the best
slightly
thing about the
missed
brand.
in both of our tight ends that we did not pick up on is they're both on a bye in week 10, so we are going to have to stream someone at tight end for week 10,
I'm fine with that.
which is
Absolutely,
fine. Just something for us to remember and keep an eye on as we go through.
It happens.
But it's not too bad. I think even if you have a nightmare and you end up with a shocker, I think we should hopefully have enough at the rest of the roster.
Interesting swing on Chase Claypool. So you're seeing some
upside.
kind of much younger receivers that have got the opportunity to have big years going at the back end of this draft as people are taking a swing. I believe we're about to pull the trigger and take our kicker.
I'm
who
hovered and
James
ready.
is going to go with.
I would say
Are we
Jake.
deciding
I mean,
already?
I'm willing to have the debate within the last minute that we have of this pick. But if this was me picking on my own, I would pick Jake Elliott. But
Jake Elliott
Jake Elliott is
I'd say.
perfect.
So the roster,
So-
that is us rounded out. Mike Williams does go right at the end there.
Right at the end.
And that is the draft complete.
Look at that.
So I think we can all say we're feeling quite confident, quite happy with that, boys.
Very. I cannot wait for Thursday night. Get those first points rolling in.
I think we have one of the better teams.
I'll be interested to
Definitely.
see when this all gets paired out. We'll see. We're going to be having, hopefully, sort of a few follow-up episodes on this, talking a bit more about what we're doing here and there week to week, showing a bit of our record, just keeping you up to date with it all. So I'm quite looking forward to seeing the projections, especially for week 1, and see where it looks like we might be starting out within this league. But I think hopefully it should be high up.
Cool. Exciting times. It's good to finally get this draft done. We talked about it for so long, and it's played out very well, I think, for us in particular. So, yeah, just buzzing for week 1, like we said. So,
Can't wait.
can't wait.
Certainly.
Lost for words.
Let's
Lost for
get
words.
going.
But
We'll have all our previews as well for week 1 coming up in this week's episode of the full podcast. So keep an eye out for that. Should be on the Thursday morning before, obviously, we get started and the season's open. So keep an eye out for that as well.
definitely. And
Let's go.
just to round out the episode, like I say, thank you for watching, of course. And shameless plug, as we always do, for our YouTube channel. Go ahead, like, comment, subscribe.
Not a clue where they're going to be at this point,
Oh,
lads.
damn it.
They could be anywhere.
Somewhere around here is also our Instagram and our
Yeah.
Twitter. Go check us out on there. We're at the Brit Iron. And normally this is the point where we also plug the Lister League, but as you can tell, already in the middle of it.
Yeah.
So perfect times. But for now, thank you for listening, and we'll see you very shortly.
See ya.